Time for a little 49ers fallout. After this weekend's games, what does it mean for the San Francisco 49ers? And as you already know, the San Francisco 49ers took care of business the way that they should have by a score of 30-13. But what are the implications going on across the league? Well, Monday Night Football, we got to see the Detroit Lions versus the Seattle Seahawks. Great game, by the way. I mean, just as a fan watching that game, super, super fun to watch. And now the Seahawks have a loss, which I was predicting. Not like I'm some czar or anything. I think a lot of people were predicting, but I assumed that they would lose to the Lions. I had that as a scheduled loss, I should say. Then they're going to play the Giants and then the 49ers Thursday night football clash. So two things I want to talk about when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. One, that game looks like it's going to be for first place in the division. Obviously early in the season, but big game for the 49ers. Let's assume that both teams win this week. Seattle beats the Giants. The 49ers take care of the Cardinals. Then that game is for sure for first place. Now, at that point, the 49ers and the Seahawks would have the same exact record if the 49ers were to win that game, but they would own the tiebreaker because they've won the head-to-head matchup. Now, if the Seahawks lose and the 49ers beat them, then they just outright, the 49ers would have the number one seed in the NFC West. Obviously, the other side of things, if the 49ers lose against Seattle and the 49ers, and Seattle wins this weekend and the 49ers win this weekend, then Seattle can have a 2-game lead, which is really, really, really crucial this early in the season. You're trying to make up that much ground. So the 49ers basically just have to beat Seattle. Just beat Seattle, take care of business, take back your rightful spot atop the NFC West. But I do want to caution 49er fans. I want to caution 49er fans who are watching that game last night or looked at the box score from that game and are like, Seattle's defense is garbage. Listen, I'm not saying they're the best defense in the league, but they do have a defensive coach. And I think it's very fair to say that the injuries on that team had a major impact in their ability to stop the Detroit Lions or limit the Detroit Lions. They had all 4 of their starting defensive linemen, their 2 edge rushers, their 2 defensive tackles, all missed that game for Seattle. And at some point in that game, they lost Love, who's their best safety. Now, all of those injuries are not long-term injuries. And there's a good chance that every single one of those players play against the 49ers. So when you have 5 starters out on defense and they're some of the better starters, that makes a big difference, especially against a team like the Lions who can run the ball as effectively as they do. And Jared Goff, who we know gets super rattled when you can pressure him. If you can't do that because you're playing all backups across the defensive line, it makes your job a lot harder. So not saying they would have won that game, not saying that the 49ers won't beat them. I'm just saying pump the brakes on thinking that the Seahawks are overrated or that defense sucks, because missing those pieces is a big deal. And we know as 49er fans that when a lot of players are missing on the 49ers, they also aren't the same team. We've seen it happen with the Rams up to this point. Injuries do matter in this league. Not that they're an excuse, but they do provide context, especially when those players are on short-term injuries and all have a chance to play that Thursday night game against the 49ers. We could be looking at a completely different team 2 weeks from now or 10 days from now. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings just beat the 49ers, the Texans, and the Packers. Now, that's significant for 2 reasons. One, it shows they're pretty legit. You beat those 3 teams. I mean, you're talking about 3 teams that most people expected to be playoff teams this year. And all 3 were playoff teams last year. You're also talking about 3 teams who have young quarterbacks who are all either top 10 or borderline top 10, depending on your rankings, and 3 teams that run the Shanahan system. So you're looking at things and saying, okay, well, Flores clearly has this system down to a T. I mean, he's certainly bought a plot of land in the heads of this system for sure. And so then the question becomes, can the 49ers close the gap and beat out the Minnesota Vikings when it comes to playoff seeding with just 14 games left? Or I should say, with them not playing Minnesota the rest of the year, but Minnesota and Flores seeing this system multiple times throughout the course of this year already and getting to see it a couple more times, is there a way that Shanahan and his schematics can close the gap on Flores? I think that's pretty tough to say. Now, they may not even match up against Minnesota, but I do want to take a look at Minnesota's schedule here, because I think this becomes very relevant. Listen, I totally understand that we're so early in the season. You're only 4 games in, but every game truly does matter. It does. And when you're talking about a team in Minnesota who's as hot as they are and still haven't had TJ Hawkinson, chances are they're going to get better. And if you look at this schedule, you got the Jets in London, you got the Lions, obviously. We know that's going to be a tough game. Then they got the Rams, which could be a sneaky tough game as well because the Rams might be getting healthy. They play the Colts, who they're not a complete team, but they can sneak up on you. Then they got the Jags, who haven't won a game. You got the Titans, who won a game, but that win was against Miami without Tua. And then you've got the Bears, who have been Cardinals, Falcons, Bears again, Seahawks. If the Seahawks are healthy, we know they can be tough. You got the Packers again, but at home, and then you've got the Lions. Let's assume that the Vikings go, let's be fair. You have 14 games left. They go 9-5 down the stretch. They go 9-5. That means the 49ers can only lose 2 more games. They have to go 12-2 to stay ahead of the Minnesota Vikings, because if they have the same record, they lost to the Vikings. This is super important because we're talking about a team in the 49ers. Really, all teams can, but the 49ers, especially with their age, can really benefit from having the number 1 seed. Now, maybe Minnesota doesn't get the number 1 seed either, but that means a potential matchup between the 49ers and the Vikings would be had in Minnesota. And we know what a house of horrors that has been since the early 90s. So that at the very least, and at the most, you could be talking about the number 1 seed on the line between these two teams. So if that's the case, that loss and these 2 early losses back to back can play a major, major factor in seeding. Now, that doesn't mean the 49ers can't win the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean they won't win the Super Bowl. Hell, I don't even know if the Vikings can go 9-5. Maybe they will turn into pumpkins. It's hard for me to see that as a possibility. Looking at this team, I'm fully bought in after those 3 weeks, but maybe I'm wrong. But just something to pay attention to. So that's the fallout from this week, and that's how it impacts the San Francisco 49ers. Those are the things to look for. But the 49ers have a very, very big opportunity in front of them, playing 2 division games. Both of these games are very, very winnable. They got to get out of this stretch 2-0, and then all of a sudden they are the best team in the NFC West again, just 6 games into the season, which is where we expect them to be. They lose to Seattle. Chances are they're now 2 games back. That's not ideal. So you definitely want to win against Seattle for sure. And you should beat Arizona. So that is the 49ers fallout for this week. Thanks for tapping in. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. Much love, y'all. Talk soon. Peace.